Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. In today's market, latency is the enemy of profitability. If your data is 2 weeks old, by the time it's consolidated, you aren't managing the future, you're performing an autopsy on the past. We've all seen that stability is gone. The companies that thrive now are the ones that can act in hours, not weeks. The problem is that most organizations are still using legacy processes to solve modern problems. When the board asks, what happens to our margins if inflation stays at 9% for another 6 months? Most finance teams need 2 weeks and 10 versions of Excel files to find the answer. My name is Simona Mertilos, and as a pre-sales consultant here at Inulta, I've spent the last several years on the front lines of these transformations. I've sat across from dozens of CFOs who all share the same frustration. They have mountains of data, but very little actionable intelligence. If there's one thing I've learned, is that finance teams are simply exhausted. They're exhausted by manual entry, by version control, and being the last ones to leave the office during budget seasons. They're under tremendous pressure to provide answers, yet up to 80% of their data is inaccessible. It's trapped in thousands of source systems that just don't talk to each other. With unstructured data growing at 65% annually, planners are spending all their time extracting data instead of analyzing it. That's why we need AI driven solutions to free up finance time so they can finally find the answers that they need. So how do we actually bridge that gap? At Inolta, we use CCH Tagetic to turn those challenges into these 5 pillars. First, we don't just process data, we use predictive intelligence to automate baseline forecasts. We let the system handle the first draft to give your team their hours back. Then we replace those disconnected systems with a unified hub. It handles multi-currency and global structure automatically, so you can see a live pulse of your business. We solve the inaccessible data problem by bringing in granular operational data. We go beyond the GL totals to give you the actual why behind those numbers. And we eliminate version control frustration. The teams stay in the Excel interface that they love, but it's backed by a secure, governed database, so you will have no more broken links. And finally, we put everything into a transparent workflow. It's a digital cockpit that lets you stop chasing emails and start making decisions. To understand how this works in practice, you have to look at the architecture. This is the CCH Tagetic Intelligent Platform. What makes it unique is that expert AI is woven into every layer. It's not just bottled on as an afterthought. From the AI Data Hub at the base that cleans your data to the core where planning, close, tax, and ESG all live together, up to the Ask AI at the top, this stack is what moves you from the manual preparation to intelligent analytics. CCH Tagetic uses pre-configured objective AI and ML models in different steps of the financial processes, from data collection and validation to analysis and predictive intelligence. CCH Tagetic is constantly ranked as a leader by every major analyst from Gartner to Bark. In fact, the PPM Partners Matrix ranks them as a premier leader with the highest levels of customer satisfaction. We implement Tagetic because it's a proven, future-proof solution that global finance leaders trust. To make this practical, we're going to follow a demo journey that mirrors a real-world budgeting cycle. We'll start with sales using AI for analyzing past sales and for predicting the future, preceding the budget values, and building a sales plan based on different drivers. Then we move to the accounting view to see how CapEx, OpEx, and payroll feed the main model without any manual effort. Finally, we'll take the controller's perspective and we will analyze P&L, balance sheet, review the final dashboards. Whatever you will see in this demo is just an example. It is completely personalizable, meaning that we can change the layout, the logic, the data, the parameters, everything. Tagetic is providing us with the tools that we can use in order to create a unique solution adapted to each of our customers' need. So let's start our journey in the CCH Tagetic budgeting and planning module. Let me share my demo screen. Great. Here we are in Tagetic. It's accessible via web browser. We can see here that we have the homepage. The homepage is completely personalizable. We can add here shortcuts from different places in the system, like reports, processes, different dashboards, different forms that we frequently use to help us use them very, very quickly once we enter the system. And we can also add new widgets on the screen if we want to, move things around, rearrange them, resize them. So it's very intuitive and very easy to use. So let's start with our annual budget process. First of all, the company that we are using in our demo is a company that is specialized in selling furniture elements. And it's structured by different entities, entities by region, and so on. So what you will see here in this example of a budget process is adapted to this ABC company, but feel free to extrapolate and to imagine how that could work for you, because everything you will see can be modified, can be adjusted, can be changed. It's just a, let's say, a proof of a capability, a demonstration of capability of what Tagetic can do. First of all, what is a process in Tagetic? A process is basically a sequence of steps that have to be followed in order to achieve a specific objective. In our case, we're talking about conceiving the annual budget. So the realization of the budget is the end goal of our process. In our process, we have different steps. We have the sales COGS plan, we have the dependent supply, payroll plan, expense plan, and at the end, of course, the reports plan. Each process can be structured by different dimensions. A dimension is actually that component, that element that you are following in order to collect the data for your budget process. In our case, this process is structured by entity, but it can be structured by cost center. It can be structured by department, line of business, customer, category, brands, anything that that you use in your business. We can, actually make that happen in our process here. What we can also do in Tagetic is that we can have different sequence of tasks that we call workflows for different dimensions. In our case, for different entities. So we can have a workflow for the New York entity that we see here on the screen, but we can have a different workflow, so different sequence of tasks for another entity, because maybe the type of activity is different. So we need to follow different steps, take different tasks in order to collect the information that we need in our budget. Okay, coming back to the New York entity, we see here many tasks that have to be performed in this sales and COGS plan. The first bunch of tasks is related to the understanding the past, so the machine learning capabilities to understand what happened in my past, and then we can move on to the other tasks, precede the budget, do the sales plan, plan the sales commissions, and so on, and of course COGS and many others. We can configure the different steps as your own needs, of course. And the steps can also be either optional, mandatory, or just informative. This can also be very easily configured. So let's start with the first step in our workflow. And that step is we want to understand the past. We want to understand the sales numbers from the different past years. And we want to understand also what has influenced those numbers. And we want to ask the system to see if the system can explain to me what happened in my past. And bear with me because it's an iterative approach, meaning that we have to provide, of course, an input to the system, to the machine learning model, in order for the model to be able to explain to me exactly the numbers from the past. So for example, in this case, I'm analyzing the sales data starting from 2020 up until 2024 actuals, and I'm giving it as an input different drivers, so financial and operational KPIs, so prices, discounts, marketing campaign, and also I'm providing it with external KPIs like inflation rate, unemployment rate, tariffs, and so on. So I want to provide all these elements, and I want to see if the system can explain to me which of these elements, which of these drivers have influenced in my past the sales numbers. And being a machine learning model, I have to also train him. So I'm giving it this data as an input. The model is going to be trained using those variables. And then I can also see the analysis of the system. The analysis of the system is going to tell me with how much accuracy has my data been able to be explained by the drivers that I have given as input. So I can see here that my model hasn't been able to reach that accuracy of 90+% that I need. So my model hasn't been explained very accurately. So this means that I have to restart the process of training, giving it more drivers in the input, more KPIs that maybe can explain those those sales numbers in the past. So if I do that again, I'm giving it new elements, new KPIs, and I'm rerunning this analysis with those new KPIs. I can see that I have been able to reach an explanation for my sales numbers. So the model is now being explained with an accuracy of 94%, meaning that the system has been able to identify those elements that have influenced my sales numbers in the past. And I can see here the contribution of every KPI, be it operational, financial, or external KPI. I can see right here in this charts. I can also see it by period, by month, in terms of importance. How much does every KPI influence my sales numbers? So everything is explained by the system for me, which is actually great because that means that starting from this analysis, the system can also help me predict the values that I will have in the future if I give it, of course, the new values for my KPIs. I will be able to predict what will happen in the future with a very big accuracy. So that is a really, really powerful tool to have when working in finance. Now, moving on to the next step in this sales planning is we can also do a budget preceding. So following a top-down approach, we can start to calculate a budget, a starting budget, a high-level budget, and then feeding that top-down. And then we will see how we can, of course, also adjust it using a bottom-up approach. So let's open a form that we can build for our budget preceding. So let's not start from zero. The system helps me and guides me to be able to pre-calculate the target values for the budget. And I have different ways of doing that. So I have the possibility to start from a reference scenario. So that's actually a foundation data set that I can choose from the historical data. It can be the actuals from last year. It can be the budget from last year or the actuals from 2 years ago. So it depends on how many historical data I have in the system. I can use those scenarios as a reference in my budget. So let's say that I want to start from the 2024 actuals. I can apply a baseline driver to that reference scenario, meaning that I can give it an annual rate, run rate, or a run rate specific to a certain quarter. So it depends on what I want to achieve. So once I select that driver, the system automatically calculates those values based on the input that I have given. So let's choose one that is on the green side, for example, the Q1, or let's see if the annual run rate is giving me a green sign. No, okay, so I'll go for Q1, but I can also do some percentage adjustments. So manual adjustments, I can input here, okay, I want to add 20% more to what the system has calculated. And I can also do adjustments in absolute value. So I can enter here amount. Yeah, I want to add a new adjustment. I can do this type of play with assumptions and with drivers globally, but I can also do it based on different categories. So I can have different assumptions for revenue and different drivers. I can also have different assumptions for expenses, for employee expenses. I can choose different drivers in order to calculate that target value for my budget, right? So if I select here, okay, for the revenue, I want to start from the budget for last year, and I can choose a different run rate for each uh, product family that I have in my company. So for tables, I'm doing a Q3, for chairs Q2, and so on. So I can play with these drivers as much as I want to. And once I select or modify values in the left side of the screen, I can see here on the right side that my target scenario for 2025 is changing automatically as I change the values in the left side. And this looks like a mini PNL. I can also see here that I can bring in the historical data if I want to directly in this form, because I want to have this comparison of values. I want to see how I stand compared to last year's. Of course, I can add different graphics here. So completely personalizable. It serves as a baseline, as a starter for budgets, not to start from zero. And of course, all these budgets or these values, once I'm happy with them, I save the form and it's cascaded top down. And of course, the next step in the process would be to work on the sales plan. So as a sales rep, I can enter to get it here. I can open this form and I can work on my sales plan. This sales plan, of course, is just an example. In our example, is structured by customers and products. So if I'm scrolling down in this report, I can see here the first column is the customers, and for every customer, I can see the products that I'm planning to sell for this 2025 budget that I'm working on here. I can adjust the units for every month if I want to increase specific units for specific products. I can do that directly in the form, and the total product sales is calculated automatically by the system. I can also see different other important information like the actuals from last year, because I want to compare those values. I want to see how I stand. I can see the variance that is also calculated, and I can see also the variance for my total target that has been given to me using that top-down approach. If I want to add a new product in my sales plan, I can do that directly in this form in Tagetic. The system is giving me automatically the list of products that are available for this customer, and I can start planning my units. I can plan my discounts depending on what I have to achieve, right? And yes, I can see how all the totals are recalculated as I'm entering new values here. What is also important in Tagetic is the fact that we can use data validation controls in the system. So we don't leave the users to enter exactly all the numbers that they want to enter. We can restrict them to different, let's say, values or For example, if we don't want to, if we want to restrict the user from saving this form if they're out of target, we can do that directly in the form. So we can add the new data validation control. And for example, if I erase all these values here, I can see that I'm at a very, very low variance from the target. And I'm being said here that I'm out of target. So the system won't let me save this form, right? So I need to adjust these values in order to be able to save the form. And this is very good because it minimizes the number of rejections that we can have in a budgeting process, right? Because in this way, we make sure that the users are only entering relevant information, that the numbers are checked, and the justifications are provided. Okay, so that was an example of a sales plan. We can move now into the expense part. So for the expense part, we can start planning CapEx, OpEx, and we can also do the payroll planning. So planning with the expenses with the employees. So let's see an example of a capital expenditure planning form that we can have in Tagetic. Okay, so what I have here is a list of components in my CapEx plan, along with an asset class. So for every element that I'm adding to this list, I'm also associating an asset class. This asset class helps me attach to it a depreciation method that will further help me or help the system to calculate the depreciation based on the elements that I have in each class, the amounts that I planned, and of course I can see here also how the depreciation will look in the P&L and in the balance sheet. So if I want to add a new element like CPM software, I give it an asset class, software intelligence. I can give it a certain amount, maybe for multiple amounts and so on. So then the system, once I save this, the system will automatically distribute this amount, calculate the depreciation, and I will find these elements here in my reports at the end. Let's see also an example of operational expense planning form. Each form that I'm opening in Tagetic has its own parameters because it helps us filter the data and doesn't let the system to overload with a bunch of data that they don't need. So we're only loading the data that we're using, and all the data that we're editing is blocked from editing for other users. So that means that there is no possibility that two users modify the same data at the same time. And also very important to note here is that everything is traceable, everything is auditable. So we have auditing capabilities. Every change that we're doing at the cell level, every comment that we add, every attachment that we add is recorded in the database with a timestamp. We know exactly what has been changed, with what value, by whom, at what time, and so on. So that's very, very important. This is an example of an operational expenses form. We can see here different elements in different categories for the fixed operating expenses. We can plan the amounts for every month of the year. We can also bring in the previous data, historical data, as a reference for comparison. We can also add variance to actuals and so on. So I can compare it to my previous budget. I can compare it to my actuals. I can also add here new amounts, right? If I want to adjust it, I can come here and adjust it manually. I can add comments and I can add also attachments. For example, if I'm doing a new contract for rent, if the rent is changed and I want to be able to add that contract that I've signed, that lease contract into Tagetic, I can do that. So the system will allow me And the person that comes next, either the approver or the CFO or whomever is in charge of reviewing the data, can also see that attachment and see that justification, right? So it's directly there. All the values can be explained with comments, with attachments, and so on. And we can also do the configuration in such a way that it can be mandatory, right, to add comments or attachments in certain use cases as well. What is also very important here to note is that we have a functionality in Tagetic, which is called spreading. The spreading actually allows us to start from a total amount and distribute that amount on rows, on columns, or on both rows and columns at the same time using different methods, either proportionally or flat or based on seasonality or based on a previous scenario. We can choose whichever method fits our needs the best. So let's do an example. So I've chosen the proportional method, and let's say that I have a total amount for cafeteria expenses of 30,000 this year. And I want the system to help me distribute this amount proportionally with the existing values that were in the cells. So the system does that, and I can also do it by column here. Again, the system is allowing that automatically, and then I can do it for both rows and columns at the same time. Now, if I have expenses that are fixed, I know that they are not going to be changed, and I want them to be blocked from this spreading capabilities, I can, just choose the cells here, right click on them, and then lock them. So if I want to redo the spreading, for example, for the entire table of expenses that I have, I can do that, and the system will distribute automatically the total amount to the remaining cells that are not blocked, which is absolutely great. Now, what I can do in Tagetic is I can also create multiple versions of a budget. If I want to test different theories, different factors, right? Different conditions, maybe an optimistic view, a pessimistic one, I can create multiple versions of the same budget, right? And what I can do with those versions is I can bring them here for comparison. I want to see how I sit, how I stand from version 1, from version 2, or so on. So if I have multiple versions, I can bring them directly to any form in Tagetic to be able to compare that. So we can we can proceed with a what if analysis in Tagetic. Now, this is just an example of operating expenses. We can use Tagetic in order to do driver-based planning for other categories of expenses as well. For example, for travel. For travel budget, if we have visibility into the upcoming trips that are planned for the year that we are budgeting, we can start from different assumptions like airfare drivers, lodging drivers, per diem allowance, and so on. Using these assumptions that we set in the beginning, we can start planning the trips, right? And we're inputting the trips, the duration, the date, how many nights, what type of travel, what type of location, and so on. And from this data that we're inputting, the system will automatically calculate the amounts that are required, and of course distribute them on the months that they are going to be that they are planned to actually happen. Another example is for the marketing expenses. So this is a different type of way in which we can plan for marketing expenses in Tagetic. If we have visibility to the events that will happen, the dates, the duration, the amounts, we can add them directly in Tagetic, and then the system will add these expenses in the final reports. Okay, now let's look also at the planning for the employees, because using Tagetic, we can also plan for the expenses that we will have with our employees. If we have in mind to change different benefits plan for the employees or transfer other employees from different departments to other departments, or some employees are going to be terminated in the near future, we can also add that into Getic using um, a form like this one, for example, here, in which we can see all the employees that we have in our department here in our cost center, when they were hired, what salary they have. We can adjust them, give them a higher merit increase. We can give them bonuses, right? So we can plan for these types of modifications that we have in mind. We can also plan for new headcount. So if we're planning to hire in the next year, we can add those headcounts directly into Getic. We're selecting the date that we want to hire, the type of employee, salary, benefits plan, medical plans, dental plans, whatever other plans that we're planning to give that employee. And then, of course, based on some assumptions that we configure together into Getic, the system automatically calculates those amounts and, of course, integrates them into the overall picture of the company. Good. Now let's look at some reports, because let's say that we have finished, our annual budget process. Let's see how the P&L looks like. So as a finance team member, I don't need to do anything else, right? So I have gathered the data, I have reviewed it, I have approved it, everything looks great. Now I want to see the P&L, right? So the system is automatically generating this P&L based on the data that we have inputted in this annual budget process. So we can see here the graph, we can see here all the elements that are composing this P&L, distribution of the amount by month, and then we can see also the COGS, gross margin, employee expenses. So everything that we have planned has all been aggregated here based on the different categories and then on the chart of accounts that we're using behind Integetic, and everything fits great in this P&L here. So this is an example of a layout. Of course, we can change it, the colors, the setup, everything can be personalized. And of course, we can also see a balance sheet, because Together can also generate balance sheets, and we can see here also both components. We can see here the assets, we can see here the liabilities, of course, with some graphs on the right side, and all the calculations that are done by the system automatically. And of course, we can also bring in the previous data, historical data, to see exactly how we sit from that end. Good. Now, we can also create dashboards in Tagetic. So other than these reports that I've shown you here, Tagetic has this dashboarding capability where we can, use the data, be it from the annual budget process or from another process like forecasting, right? Tagetic can use that data to create dashboards. And it's very, very easy to do that. So if we just click on here on add, and we select a type of graphic that we want to choose, and then just selecting the data set that we want to use, for example, financials, the reporting view that we want to use. If you want to create a report based on financial data or by sales data, the system lets me select that, and I can add filters to it. I can add visualization. I can choose my elements that I want to see in this graph. So I can very easily create a dashboard in Tagetic without having any knowledge of BI capabilities or coding capabilities. It's a no code, right? But I can also do it even easier than that. So if you can imagine what is easier than that is just telling the system what I want to see in my own natural language. So that's what AI is doing in Tagetic. So we have this Ask AI here, right? It's actually letting me tell him what I want to see, and it's going to create that graph for me. So let's ask him, show me revenue by month and scenario for 2024 actual versus 2025 budget for product chairs. Okay, I'm giving it here as an input. And now I'm expecting this Ask AI to create a graphic that's going to show me exactly what I asked for. Okay, so as you can see, it has lasted like 2-3 seconds, and automatically I have a new graphic here. I can make it even bigger, right? I have a new graphic here that is actually showing me sales by period and scenario. It's using the 2025 sales forecast data set, and it has added a scenario for 2024 actuals and 2025 budgets. And of course, it has selected the category of products, which is chairs. It's amazing, right? It's super, super easy to build such graphics in Tagetic just by using natural language, interacting with the Ask AI capabilities in Tagetic, and you directly have it here at your fingertips, the graphic that sometimes you might need days to provide, right? From gathering data to actually building this dashboard. So these are the capabilities in Tagetic, just a sneak peek of what we can bring to your finance teams. Now, let's go back to the last slides here. 1 second to stop sharing. Okay. Okay. So coming back to Tagetic and to Inulta, we have been a strategic platinum partner with Tagetic for quite some time now, and we are very proud of that. Now, if what you have seen today is something that is very interesting for you, or you would like to find out more, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, send us an email, and yeah, we'll be very happy to be in touch with you. And of course, show you more and more capabilities of what CCH Tagetic and Innova can bring to you. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed it today. And yeah, have a great week forward. Bye.